Welcome to Cruising Off Duty Episode 2. If you didn't see Episode 1, you should go back and check it out first. That's where I convinced my wife that living in the Caribbean on a sailboat would be an awesome idea, mostly by taking her on cruises and showing her that this is the lifestyle we could live one day. Once she's on board with buying a sailboat, we decide to map out 5 different boats throughout the United States and do a 6,000-kilometer road trip in just 5 days. That meant living in a car and dealing with bad brokers. This trip brought us to some creepy, rundown marinas that really spooked us, but we luckily found our dream boat, off duty. And that's where this episode takes over. Okay, so you made an offer on a boat. Great. Now what? You probably should get a survey. But by who? And then, if the survey comes out okay and you want to buy the boat, how do you move it from North Carolina, where you bought it, all the way to Ottawa, Canada? You're not going to pull that with a car or a truck that you own. Okay, so you need an 18-wheeler. And how much is that going to cost? And am I going to need some sort of wide load special permits to bring my big boat down the highway? Is that going to be my job? Is that the truck driver's job? And how much of a hassle is it to bring a boat across the US-Canadian border? Am I going to have to pay a lot of extra duty? Are there a lot of forms I need to fill out? Okay, after all that, your boat arrives at your new location. You're good, right? Wait, how do I get the boat off the 18-wheeler? Does my club have a crane that does it? Do I have to hire a crane? How much is that going to cost? You finally get your boat put away for the winter and you think all the hard work is behind you, only to come back in the spring to find that all that anti-fouling paint that was on the bottom flaked off due to the harsh Canadian winters. Yay, more work you didn't know you had to do, and at a skill that you have no clue how to do, which is taking bottom paint off a boat and sanding it and repainting it all within 2 weeks before the boat needs to be launched. This being our first boat, we obviously had a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. But watch this episode and you'll learn from our experience. All right, let's get down to this. So you never buy a boat without having a contingency in your offer that says you need to have a survey that you are satisfied with. Now, you want to get a survey from a recommended surveyor, not one suggested by the seller's broker. The surveyor should be very thorough, going over every working part of the boat, and he will mark down in his report anything that is substandard. Our survey came back perfectly fine, so we were willing to close the deal and move on to the next question is, how are we going to ship this boat from North Carolina to Ottawa? Now, our boat weighs 12,500 pounds dry. So needless to say, we can't tow that with a regular vehicle. It needs an 18-wheeler. Not just any trucking company can pull a sailboat. They need to have a specially designed float trailer with hydraulic lifting arms that supports the side of the sailboat. With a fixed keel, sailboats stand exceptionally tall on a trailer with a high center of gravity. So make sure whomever you choose to ship your sailboat is fully insured and has a long track record of shipping sailboats. You don't want to find out that some cut-rate trucker has flopped your sailboat on its side in the middle of the I-95 and has just driven off. You don't want to get that call from the state troopers that says they've blocked 4 lanes of traffic and there's a huge cleanup bill waiting for you. We shopped around and found quotes from reputable shipping companies and found that our new sailboat coming from North Carolina and being delivered to Ottawa was going to cost around $8,000. Luckily, we found a reputable trucker who was shipping a boat to Florida and said that he would pick up our boat on the way back to Canada for $5,000. The only caveat was he will pick up the boat when it is convenient for him, and he will give us an exact date later. He said it would be sometime in December, but that's about all he would tell us. But for $3,000, I was willing to be flexible with the delivery date. The only thing with knowing your boat's going to be delivered in December when you live in Ottawa is that you never know if there's going to be a ton of snow by then. I called the Nepean Sailing Club and told them that our delivery date would be sometime in December. I mentioned, what if there's some snow? Do you guys have a tractor that can move it out of the way so we can bring the 18-wheeler in? And they said, yes, we do, but we will not do that. That's your expense. So Now we had to cross our fingers that we didn't have a huge dump of snow just before our delivery date. If that happened, that was going to require me to call a plow company to move snow out of the way so my 18-wheeler could get into the yard. That's another expense I really didn't want to have to spend. This is a drone video I shot last year, but this is pretty typical of every winter in the Nepean Sailing Club, so you can see what I was up against. Okay, let's see what hurdles we've already crossed. We found the boat that we wanted. We made an offer and it's accepted. Check. We found a surveyor and we got the boat surveyed and it passed. Check. We found a reputable trucker who is willing to pick it up at a reasonable price. So the next hurdle is getting the boat ready to be shipped. So I had to pay a service provider down there to take the boat apart, take the mast off, winterize all the lines, and get it ready to be shipped, and also organize a crane to lift it onto the 18-wheeler in North Carolina. Now, all of this had to be done by a service provider because obviously I couldn't drive down there every weekend and work on my boat, so it ended up costing me $800. So the day in December comes where the truck driver calls me and says he's about to pick up my boat. He said he'd call me when he's just a few hours away from the Canadian-US border, and I'm just to meet him there and do the paperwork. He'd transported many boats across the border, and he said it was really quite easy. You just go in and declare it as if you're buying electronics or any other item, and then you pay the tax, which in Canada is 13%. Ouch. I just had to give the government $7,850 of my money. Okay, so crossing the border with a boat is an easy process, but a financially painful process. I now officially own a boat in Canada, and I take this opportunity to go around and look at my boat while it's on the back of the 18-wheeler. Looks pretty good, except it's all covered in salt. Part of my $800 I gave to the service providers to prep my boat for shipping was that they power washed the entire thing. In hindsight, that was stupid, considering I'm going to have this boat drive down a highway in the wintertime. Needless to say, that was wasted money. Notice that the bottom paint looks really good. Looks like I won't need to do anything. Well, at least that's what I thought at the time. So the boat arrives at the club yard, and the assistant manager was supposed to meet us to show us where the boat's supposed to go and where we're supposed to put our mast. Unfortunately, he wasn't there, but a bosun was. And the bosun wasn't sure what to do with our mast and boat, so we just sort of winged it. We just stuck the mast wherever we could find a spot and then put the boat approximately where they said we were supposed to put it. This is the downside to having your boat delivered in the off-season. There's really nobody around to show you where to go if things don't quite fit where they're supposed to be. You see, before the boat arrived, we were told where our location would be, and we leveled our cradle and put it in the spot they told us to. But when the crane arrived, it didn't have a long enough arm to reach that spot, and so we had to just drag the cradle closer to the truck and put it there. So here's where the crane is trying to reach back to our cradle and realizes he can't quite make it, and we have to just drag the cradle closer to the truck, which pretty much means our cradle is no longer level and our boat is going to be sitting on a slant. The whole day was just a comedy of errors based on the fact that we didn't know what we were doing. Our crane was too short to actually reach where we needed to be. Our cradle ended up being unlevel. The crane seemed to have some sort of hydraulic malfunction where if the guy walked away from the control panel, the boat just started lowering itself. Having never owned a boat before, we had no idea how much weight was supposed to be on the keel versus on the pads, and in hindsight, we probably put way too much weight on the pads and not enough weight on the keel. So if there's one piece of advice I'd give you, if you've never owned a boat before and you're trying to unload it in a yard, make sure you get somebody from the club who knows what they're doing to assist you. We finally got the boat on the cradle. We were just so relieved and happy that it was all over.
Fist up, yeah.
So we're good, right? We've got the boat unloaded and we're just ready to take off in the spring and have some fun with this boat. Not so quick. It seems like all that great anti-fouling paint that was on the bottom when I first had it shipped just started chipping off during the cold winter in Canada. I guess it makes sense. In a saltwater climate, they've got to worry about things like barnacles attaching to the bottom of the boat, in which case the anti-fouling just flakes off so that the barnacle goes with it. But a saltwater bottom paint doesn't work very well in the northern climates. Obviously, it shrank in the wintertime and just started peeling off all on its own. So we figure out we need to redo the bottom paint with less than 2 weeks to go before the commercial crane comes and loads all the boats in at once. So we figure, how hard can it be? Just take some paint scrapers and scrape off all the loose stuff, then I'll go and sand it and we'll repaint, and we're done. So here I am sanding away, completely oblivious to the harm that I'm probably doing myself. I'd be lucky if that paper mask was even stopping half of the dust. I had red and black stuff in my nose, in my eyes, in my ears. I really should have been wearing something like this. And if I was lucky, I could have got Janice to wear something like this. I know, wishful thinking, but boy would we have been popular new members of that club. Well, to this day, I haven't grown a tail or noticed a third eye starting to form in the middle of my forehead, so I think we survived it, but should have been smarter. After a couple of fresh coats of bottom paint, the boat was looking great, and we were ready to splash down for our first season on the Ottawa River. Follow us in the future episodes when we explore the different anchorages of the Ottawa River and the benefits of having a floating cottage over an actual cottage. If you've enjoyed this episode, please click like. And if you'd like to see more episodes from Cruising Off Duty, please subscribe.